And there's currently a jobs bill before Congress that would do two big things for small business owners: cut more taxes and make available more loans. It would help them get the credit they need and eliminate capital gains taxes on key investments so they have more incentive to invest right now. Holding this bill hostage is directly detrimental to our economic growth.
The Senate bill totals $30 billion. It's a $14 trillion economy. In contrast, the Bush tax cuts would affect about $500 billion worth of business income. So you've got to first compare what are big versus small policies. The Senate bill is a small policy. It's not going to move things very much. And you also have to be very wary of targeting in this environment.
Well, President Obama speaking about the economy in the Rose Garden today. This, of course, after some bad numbers last week, specifically the Commerce Department downgrading or revising the GDP, the gross domestic product, for the second quarter from 2.4%, revising it down to 1.6%. Pretty anemic growth, still growing, but pretty small. And that is raising some questions about what's next and what's the White House going to do. Let's bring in our panel. Fred Barnes, executive editor of the Weekly Standard. Mara Liasson, national political correspondent of National Public Radio, and syndicated columnist Charles Krauthammer. Okay, Fred, there was a lot of talk by the president today about that Senate bill, the small business bill they're calling it. We heard from Doug Holtz-Egan about the size of it. What about this statement by the president?
Well, it is a small bill, and it's a bill, that had bipartisan support when it was just the tax breaks for small business. Then they added in this $30 billion lending facility, which will have, government money, which could then go to banks and so on. And Republicans oppose that. Even Olympia Snow. When you lose Olympia Snow, you're gone. And so all they have to do is just remove the lending facility, and the tax breaks will get through right away. And that it may not make Harry Reid happy or President Obama, but look, it's not going to do much in the short run. There is a perfect example out there in the world of what has worked so much better than what the president has done, and that example is called Germany. And we know what Germany did. What Germany did was reduce their unemployment benefits. For one thing, they cut spending and cut their deficit, and they loosened up on the labor market, on hiring and firing and so on, which has been very strict in Europe. And what happened in the second quarter? 9% growth. Unemployment is down to, I think, 7.6%. And compare that, the Obama administration did the opposite of all of those things. And what do we get here? 9.5% unemployment, 1.6% growth. And the ultimate embarrassment may be, and I think this will happen, the so-called summer of recovery. We'll probably wind up with a net loss of jobs, June, July, and August, a net loss of jobs in America during the Obama administration's so-called summer of recovery.
Mara, there weren't a lot of specifics today. Obviously, he focused on that Senate bill. Robert Gibbs, the White House press secretary, said the president's going to come forward with some economic ideas in mid-September, but no big stimulus package, right?
The president said that, my economic team is hard at work in identifying additional measures that could make a difference in hiring in the short term and increasing competitiveness, and he's going to, tell Congress to pass them when they come back. I would just say that this speech today and the Gibbs briefing had the feel of a placeholder. He doesn't have a whole lot of time to come up with something kind of big and bold that could pass, and that's going to be pretty hard, and that will actually have an effect in the short term. I mean, I can imagine some kind of a package of a payroll tax holiday and something else to entice Republicans on board. But right now, this had the look and feel of a lot of other speeches he's given, which is a small, narrowly targeted bill being held up by Republicans in the Senate, and he's out there asking them to drop their opposition.
In fact, Gibbs said, quote, there's only so much that can be done today in the briefing. So quickly, do they think it's a political winner to keep talking about this Senate bill?
Well, I think, as Fred said, the Senate bill is not that controversial. There might be some aspects of it that are. This is what they thought was passable. This is targets small business. That's the heart of the Republican constituency.
Charles.
Look, it may be a placeholder, the bill, but it's classic Obama. First of all, it's about targeting tax cuts. What he's saying is that this is how liberals operate. You raise the rates across the board, and then the government will deign to return some of the money on a targeted tax cut, meaning if you do exactly as they say, which means, for example, if they favor, say, high-tech investment, and they'll give you a cut on capital gains, and you have a business in which you don't need that, but you need to spend on marketing, the government thinks it knows how to redirect your capital in a superior way. So that's number one. It's a classic liberal way to operate, whereas Republicans want lower rates across the board and eliminate the targeting of tax cuts that you had in the 86 tax bill, the Reagan-Bradley bill. But secondly, what you got is the way Obama dealt with this. He said Republicans have to consider whether they want to act in the national interest or pursue their political interests in November. This is how he treats every issue. He never will credit the sincerity or the logic of an opposition argument. In this case, I think that the bill is small, insignificant, and will hurt the economy, but he won't even recognize that. It's only he stands in favor of the national interest, and Republicans are always acting out of a partisan basis. It's an appalling way to make arguments, but he does that on every single issue.
Fred, the big fight this fall obviously will be over the Bush-era tax cuts and what happens there. So far, everything we're hearing from the administration is that they are going to stop the top-tier tax cuts, right?
Well, they can do it because they'll lapse in automatically in January, and I think that's what they want to do, of course. But just think, Bret, that if President Obama stepped out tomorrow and said, I've changed my mind, I think we do need to raise taxes on the wealthy in this country. They haven't paid their fair share. But for the next 2 years, I think we need to keep those tax cuts in place. The economy's not recovered sufficiently enough, and we're going to keep them in place. I think you would see a boom in the stock market, for one thing. The economy would improve. Obama would become more popular. It would have many, many benefits for the economy and for President Obama himself, and maybe even for Democrats running for office. But he's too ideologically rigid that he can't go there.
Well, but he'd have to do something more populist attached to that. If he did, and that's not an unimaginable compromise to let them all go for 2 years, but I think he'd have to do something else, some kind of safety net thing, maybe a payroll tax holiday, something for the people on the lower end if you're going to do that.
I'm not sure it's entirely ideological. I think a part of this is pure narcissism. I don't think I've ever heard him say, I changed my mind or I was wrong. And if he does...
Why does he have to say, I changed my mind? Why can't he just say, I accept an idea from the other side? He's done that.
Because he'd be changing his mind.
Well,
It'd be a switcheroo for sure, but a smart one.
We'll leave it there.